I got my watch out and was looking at my watch and was like, holy cow, we're running 45-second miles. No wonder we passed people along 50 highway out of Newton like they're standing still. 45-second miles, we're running 80. And then I thought, all right, click, 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 click. I moved the throttle up to run 8. I thought, we're fired. I'm going to see when the overspeed whistle blows. Good day and welcome to Tuesday. My name is Mel Wilson. Hired out on the Sioux line summer of 90 and got the engineer promotion starting January of 91 and April of 94. I resigned from the Sioux line when the Santa Fe was hiring and ended up hiring out at the same time as Stephen Priest, and we went through engineer training together. Shortly after we were promoted, actually within just a few days, the railroad called us, crew management called us and said, we're mailing you tickets on Southwest to Albuquerque. You're going to Albuquerque, New Mexico for your conductor promotion exam. And at that time, you started out as a switchman and you'd take the promotion for switch foreman, like a yard conductor. At some point, had we not been forced into engine service, we would have been asked or forced to take a conductor promotion. But after, 2 or 3 classes after that, it all changed to what it is currently. It's a completely different protocol and set of events to get you promoted. But one of the best moves I ever made was hiring out on the Santa Fe. And what a cool railroad to be part of that legacy. If you had a 70-mile-an-hour train, you were expected to run at 70, not 65, not 66, 70. And the dispatchers, if you were on a 70-mile-an-hour train, were expected to keep you moving as fast as you could, get the slow trains in a siding or cross them over so that you could get around them if you're on a 70-mile-an-hour train. It was just incredible how quickly trains could get across the system from Chicago to LA or vice versa. And so many times we were required to check speed recorders en route shortly after we departed and close to 25 to 30 miles per hour as you could, and then up to track speed if you're 55 or 70. You were supposed to check the speed recorder and be fairly diligent about it, and then, for legal reasons, obviously, but it was too far off, then mechanical would have the report about it and they could correct it later. But many times on piggyback trains like the old 199 or the 198, Kansas City to Wellington, we could get there in like 3 hours and 20 minutes. And as we would talk to other crew members, and mostly old heads, they're like, yeah, your speed recorder was off a little bit. But as long as you didn't break anything, nobody reprimanded you. And we had a lot of cool, fast trips in that respect. And they knew how to run trains. And it was really cool to have been a part of that. And it held up into the BNSF days for a while, for a few years. One notable trip, we were on duty at Newton, of all places, and we were called for a Z NBY WSP-7. It was a makeup train due to a derailment. They had reloaded some UPS trailers and from damaged cars and put them on these good flat cars. And it was like an SD40-2, an 800 class -8, and I think we had 7 flat cars. And the inbound engineer was Spider McNabb. He was a very eccentric guy. And typically we'd have, a little briefing with the inbound crew to know what to expect, if there's any issues or this or that. All he said was, you're gonna like it, and then walked off to the depot. I'm like, okay. And so we get on board, we take off. I didn't check the speed recorder till we got to Pomona. And Newton is milepost 187. Pomona is milepost 69 in the flats west of Ottawa. And I got my watch out and was looking at my watch and was like, holy cow, we're running 45-second miles. No wonder we passed people along 50 highway out of Newton like they're standing still. And the 45-second miles, we're running 80. And then I thought, all right, click, 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 click. I moved the throttle up to run 8. I thought, we're fired. I'm going to see when the overspeed whistle blows. And it's a real loud, shrill whistle. And much like the little slider whistles that we had as kids. And except it was at the high pitch. And that's literally a whistle. When you get going too fast for the overspeed, there's a valve, an air valve, and it starts blowing. And that's the warning. And you go too many seconds, it'll put your air brakes into penalty, and you have to recover that. But the overspeed started blowing at 85 miles an hour. So I just shut the throttle back down a little bit and pegged it back on 70, which was 80, and we ran the 187-mile trip. And we got to the holding signal outside of Turner at milepost, shortly just west of milepost 87, in 2 hours and 40 minutes. And then Jesse, the ATM, finally called us when we had a restricting flashing red. He said, yeah, you're going to be crossing over the fast tracks to track 212, and you'll stop it in the clear and take the power down the runner to the pit. We got the train yarded and cut away, and I hollered at Jesse. He said, Jesse, the train's all yours on 212. He goes, all right, gentlemen, thanks for a great trip. Have a good evening. And thanks for a good trip, if he only knew. But it's a wonder, looking back after talking with the late Warren Scholl. He said, it's a wonder you guys didn't bird nest traction motors. we would have destroyed traction motors had the windings broken loose. But that was kind of reminiscent of the old Super C, so to speak, but at least got a taste of what that was like. And there's similar stories but it was pretty cool. We had some good experiences. I loved running the old SD45s. I have to say those were probably my favorites. And of course, any of the 20-cylinder power, if we had that, it was going to be good. And for the record, I have never had a failure from a locomotive with a 20-cylinder engine, ever. MRL, those were former BN mostly, some former SP, but SP units, Rio Grande, even some CSX, never had a failure from a 20-cylinder engine. It was pretty amazing. And one thing I wish that they'd stuck around longer was the old SF30C, the rebuilt U36Cs. For some crazy reason, I enjoyed running those. I guess I figured they were as close to an Alco that I'd ever get to run regularly, or semi-regularly anyway. Got in a few derailments. Actually a couple. The most notable was we were on a Newton to Kansas City manifest, and we had a block to set out at Emporia, and we were crossing over at Eleanor, Kansas from the Lahana sub over to Main 3. You cross over all 3 tracks there, and we got about halfway or so through the crossovers, and we went into emergency. We got stopped, and it ended up there was an empty 50 to 60 foot tank car that was in between some loads, and it had actually lifted just enough for one truck to derail. And when that derailed, it broke the air hose apart and put us in emergency. We had the Transcon shut down for I don't know how long. We were the subject of many a conference call that night. But had a few near misses, had a few train, car, or pickup collisions, and those were always scary naturally. Fortunately, in those, nobody was ever killed. Did have a pedestrian one night in Wichita, but won't really get into that. But it's just part of the territory. There's quite a few guys that have never had that happen, but for the most part, it's not if, but when it's going to happen. You just want to make sure you're doing everything right. And, God help us if something would have happened when back in the day when we were running some of the trains fast. Mind you, that wasn't a regular thing, but but once in a while you'd get something with a speed recorder that was off and you just ran it. They expected you to, they told us often, run it like you stole it. But anyway, it's been a fun career. I finished my career on the Lake Superior and Ishpeming up in Upper Michigan, running iron ore trains. And that's a railroad that I had studied for many, many years, like from junior high on, and visited it a couple of times. And it was some of the most fun I've ever had railroading. And being an engineer, when I would travel, there's been some opportunities too that have been pretty spectacular. And like visiting some railroads out west, and then you might get an opportunity to be in the cab and visit with some of the guys, or even ride along, maybe even run. A lot of them, when they find out you're an engineer, would stand up and say, hey, you're welcome to run it for a while if you'd like. And then we've gotten to go to New Zealand with Kevin Udaly. Made many trips to New Zealand and Australia together. And we've just had a blast. And well, the highlights would have to be when we go to Australia and we spend time in the Pilbara where the huge iron ore trains run with Rio Tinto, FMG, Fortescue Metals Group, well now Fortescue, BHP, and Roy Hill. And getting to see those huge iron ore trains running the way they do is just incredible. Once that red dust gets in your lungs, gets in your veins, gets inside you, that you're just hooked. It's pretty incredible. Lots of good experiences, and have been in contact with a lot of guys in Australia for years. But then once we started going to Australia, and the first visit was in 2011, we've gotten to meet those friends face to face and gotten closer friendships because of the trips, and then met some new guys also, and very close ties over there. It's been such a blast. About all I can think of off the top of my scalp. It was a great career for the better part of 35 years, and I'd do it all again. One thing out of all this, well, it's kind of two or three things really. Invariably, as a rail fan, with a lot of the crusty old railroaders, is like, how can you do this on your time off? How can you do this, run trains day after day after day, hundreds of thousands of miles, but yet go somewhere and ride a train? And I would just look them in the eye and was like, dude, it's somebody else's responsibility. It doesn't mean I have to just stop liking trains because I work on them for a living. It's somebody else's responsibility. I don't have that stress with the rules or anything like that looming over my head. I can sit back and relax and enjoy, and I make no apologies for it either. It's been a blast, some great opportunities, and I'd do it all over again. I miss the camaraderie with a lot of the folks. And speaking of camaraderie, not just like I'm sure it's like with pilots too, but there is a camaraderie not only within the railroad, but within the industry, and then spread throughout the world. If somebody's train down in Australia derails, you feel it, and whether it's one of your mates or not, you feel it. You hurt. If there's something bad that happens, you feel it, and you hurt along with them. And it's pretty incredible. But one thing also, besides missing the guys that I worked with, I miss running trains. I never thought I'd miss it like I do, but I've always enjoyed running trains, and I'd say that's probably one thing. Besides the people I worked with the close guys. Closeness with some of those guys is I just miss cracking the throttle. I've got a couple irons in the fire. See if I can do something about that, but we'll see.